Yeah. Wow, what a turnout, what a turnout. This is mad, this is probably the biggest number we've had in a long time. Yeah, double lines, everything, lots of new faces, which is amazing. We've been doing this week in, week out, and obviously yesterday we got the successful verdict, if you like. So I actually wrote something that was quite a big moment. I will read it out. Yesterday was a huge moment for history and a step in the right direction. Now, I don't like using the word, I'll get close to the mic, to the speaker. I don't like using the word justice, because justice would mean George Floyd would still be alive. But it's accountability. That officer took a man's life in cold, calculated manner, and the whole world saw it. Now, it took 330 days for this man to actually be sentenced, and the family of George Floyd will finally have some peace. The same day this sentence happened, there was footage coming out of America of a young teenage black girl being shot 4 times by the police and killed in the street. Does her life not matter? Last week, a young 13-year-old boy, Adam Toledo, was shot dead with his hands above his head in the middle of a trial. Dante Wright, a young 20-year-old man, was also shot and murdered by a police officer as he pulled him over. So to look at this guilty verdict as a victory would be wrong, sadly. The fight must go on, and we must keep taking to the streets and fighting for justice. An oppressive, racist system built on white supremacy will never be able to give us justice. The UK is not innocent. There are countless families in the UK still fighting for justice. Yusuf Maki and Shukri Abdi right here in Manchester. Mohammed Hassan's family are still fighting for justice. Benny Mujinga's family are still fighting for justice. Kevin Clark's family are still fighting for justice. Christopher Capasta's family are still fighting for justice. Christopher Older's family are still fighting for justice. And so many more. Mark Duggan's family are still fighting for justice. The 72 lives taken in Grenfell are still fighting for justice. Now, they were complete families wiped out in that fire. They don't want justice. They want accountability. Now, I don't want to use the word justice because the criminal justice system in the UK just can't deliver that to these families. They won't get their loved ones back, but the very least they can get is peace of mind, knowing that someone has been held accountable for the death of their family member. Now, we have to keep taking to the streets and being organised in the fight to end racism and any form of oppression. The death of George Floyd has changed the world as we know it, and it will never be the same, and it will never be forgotten, more importantly. Now, it's part of a movement, and it's our responsibility to keep applying pressure from all angles. Now, it's been a very difficult year, and the past few weeks we've been up against it, but I'm proud to be part of the Hulme Stand Up to Racism group and come and take the knee here every Wednesday with a bunch of like-minded people. Let's keep taking to the streets. Let's keep up the discussions, let's keep this in people's faces, and one step at a time, we'll start to dismantle these systems that have oppressed us all for hundreds of years. Change is coming, power to the people, no justice, no peace. Anyone else want to come up and speak? It's an open mic, so if you're new here, feel free to jump on. Like I said, we share the discussions. It's normally a much smaller group than this, but it's great to see so many people come out, so it is an open forum. Anyone come and say whatever you like. Even if you've never spoken before, feel free to jump up. Amazing. Go on, Luke.
Yeah, just something little. I've never come here for quite a while. I've never really said anything because it's a really emotional thing coming here every week, and it's not something that feels like a fad or you put it on your Instagram or your Facebook. Like, it's something, when we take the knee for that time, it's something that's serious, and it really kind of makes me feel terrible, and I feel embarrassed that we have to say Black Lives Matter. Every time I hear Black Lives Matter, I feel like why do we have to say this? And I understand we have to say this because of the whole institution. There are people who need to hear Black Lives Matter because they don't believe that, and every time we say it, it gives me a knot in my stomach, but that's why we're here, and we have to keep saying it, and that's it.
Thank you. It's brilliant. Do you know, when I heard the verdict last night, it did really make me feel great. This is a relief. I am so glad that that was the verdict. I think it's the right verdict. Coming here, like you guys have been here every week for months and months since George Floyd was murdered, and he was murdered, and that's now legal, and it said he was murdered, he was killed. We know that. Coming here, we've made some history. We make history, okay? The justice system, we talk about justice. We ain't going to get justice because this system isn't for us. It's against us. We know that. We talk about that week in, week out here in Hulme. However, what we are doing is making history. We are pushing and demanding for change to happen. So I think you're right. We have to keep up the push. We have to keep up the fight, because this justice system, like the rest of the system, the stuff that creates it, has to be taken down in order for us to get true justice, and a justice that we create and we know is in our benefit. So it is really, I felt really heartened when I heard, you know, that verdict. However, we have still got so much further to go. We have to keep up the fight, and we're still going to be coming out, because as you said, you named those people, that these deaths are going to continue. The austerity will continue. The scapegoating is going to continue. It's going to get worse. I'm sorry to say, I don't want to bring a downer. It is going to get worse. But what we should do is we should realise and take strength and confidence from the fact that globally, uniting together, fighting this system will work, and we have to keep sight of that, and we have to keep up the fight. So thank you. Who's looking at the usual suspects?
Okay, first, well done to everybody that's out here tonight, because we are part of the thousands of people across the country, and thousands, hundreds of thousands actually across the world, that have built this global Black Lives Matter movement. Absolutely well done to everybody, and the fact that we're still going is, you know, is fantastic. And let us be clear about this, that verdict was not about the courts. It was not about, oh, the system worked. Actually, the system didn't work, because if the system worked, George Floyd would be here today. That verdict was about the fact that finally people in America, the people that who think actually that they run the world, saw the anger on the streets and knew they had to do something. That's why he went to court. That's why he was prosecuted. Let's be very clear. The worst that was really going to happen to him was that he would have lost his job. But we shifted that. We forced them to prosecute, and it is historic. The outcome, you know, that verdict is historic, because actually never before has a police officer been found guilty of murdering someone in the US. This is the first time someone's been found guilty. And you know, for all they say about we're prosecuting, it's one bad apple, 300 people have lost their lives at the hands of the police in America only this year. 300, just think about that. And while this court case has been going on, people have been losing their lives at the hands of the police, black people. This is what happens. And I think it's very important for us to always remember that while we stand in solidarity with our sisters and brothers in America fighting on the front line, we have our own front line here. You know, Lamin talked about the deaths here in Britain. I've got a very good friend called Jana Alder. Her brother Christopher Alder was killed at the hands of the police. She has been fighting for years for justice. She's never had it. And actually, while she was fighting for justice, she was actually spied on by the police. She was followed by the police. They made her out to be a problem. Not so far away from here, I've got another friend called Carol Duggan. Carol Duggan has been fighting for justice for her nephew, Mark Duggan, who was shot on the streets of London while after coming out of a taxi that had made a hard stop because it was surrounded by police cars. 13 police officers, armed police officers, surrounded him. He was unarmed, and they shot him dead. And the court said, actually, it's okay because those armed police officers, 13 armed police officers, were right to do what they did. It wasn't excessive force, because actually they were scared. They had a right to feel scared because a black man was stood in front of them. What does that say? What message does that send out? Because I tell you what, there were black families around this country, up and down this country, that must have been terrified after that verdict, because they meant that actually every black man is a target. an acceptable target to the police. And that's what we've got to fight. This is our problem here as well. It's not just America. Let's be very clear about this. I named 2 people I know personally whose campaigns I've been involved in, whose families I know. But actually there's many others that never get mentioned, who are fighting, constantly fighting. And I think when they saw what happened yesterday, must have celebrated, and good, because that's what we should do. This is a victory, but it's our victory. It's not the system, it's not the authorities. This is a victory for us. Let's remember that this is our victory. It only happened because we took to the streets, and we need to continue out on the streets, because actually, let's be very honest, what does it mean here in Britain? This new bill that they are pushing through in Britain would have meant actually that these events that we've been doing every Wednesday, the Take the Knee, we could have been stopped from doing that. The police could have prosecuted us. The courts could have given us 10 years in prison for being a nuisance. There would never have been the justice under this new bill that's coming out that they're trying to push through. Another thing I want to say, this report, this race report that's come out, apparently that Britain is a beacon for the rest of the world when it comes to racism, fighting racism, and being apparently an anti-racist society. I don't know what that world they live in, right? But I can tell you from experience with my black brothers and sisters, that is not the world that we live in today. That is not the Britain we know. But why do they want to use that? Because they want to change the narrative. They want to shift the story, because they've seen what we, as the Black Lives Matter movement, the anti-racist movement, has achieved over the last year, and they want to shift that narrative. They want to say, you know what, you've all just got a bit of a chip on your shoulder, move on, start acting like victims. That's what they're saying. Well, actually, we're not victims, we're survivors, and we're fighters, and we're united, and we're going to push this racist system back. Thank you very much. Oh, actually, I must also say, when we talk about building a movement, and that's what we have to do, we have to continue building the movement. So there are some organisational things involved. One of that, building a movement, is coming here every Wednesday, and I'm pretty sure we'll continue to do that. Yeah, absolutely, we'll be here every Wednesday. But also, we need to organise. And one of the ways that we want to organise is to bring people together to discuss and plan what we do next. So there will be an online meeting, a Zoom meeting on the 26th, that's Monday evening at 7 p.m. The details will be posted on Stand Up to Racism social media accounts. It's a meeting, actually, I say Stand Up to Racism will be sharing the details, but actually it's a whole host of groups that have come together for that event. It's an event that is being called by organisations, many of whom have never worked together in the past, but because of this new bill, we recognise that we're all under attack, and we have to stand together in unity and push back what the government are trying to do. So that's the 26th of April at 7 p.m. And then the next big demonstration, everyone needs to put this in their diaries, the 1st of May, we will be out in force in the centre of Manchester. May 1st is the International Workers' Day, and it's really important that we are out on the streets showing our strength, because we are united, and there are more of us than them, and we will be out on May the 1st, St. Peter's Square at 4 p.m. So please come out, join us, help us get the word out, because actually we know we make a difference. When we take to the streets, we can win, and there is so much more to fight for and a world to win. Thank you very much. I would encourage anyone to say a few words. You don't have to say too much, but even if it's just about why you're here today or what you thought.
Well, it's nice to see so many people here today. Very, very busy. I thought I had to speak tonight, and I have over the last sort of few weeks, a little bit more and a little bit more, because we are making a difference. We are making a change, but racism still exists. And we have to work harder and harder and come together and fight this together. This crime bill that they want to push through, let's be honest, we've been targeted as basically being terrorists. I'm not a terrorist, I'm not violent, I'm not a thug, I'm a mother. I'm a mother who cares for the rights of my children and for your children, so that they're brought up in a better world. I don't want people walking down the street and thinking that they have a right to just go up and touch my daughter's hair, to mock them because of the colour of their skin, for them to be spat at because of the colour of their skin. And yes, this has happened. I wrote this last year, and it's still relevant now. Bear with me one sec. When those officers thought it right
to take away another black man's life. They didn't even care to think if he had a family, children, or a wife. You say you don't see colour, yet you play with my daughter's hair. You'll say, I didn't expect it to feel like that, as you mock her and continue to stare. She asked to play, you spat at her, because her colour she won't hide. But when they call her a liar, in teachers she's taught she can't confide. If her father drives a car that's much flashier than yours, you don't first assume he worked hard for it, you assume it's from an illegal cause. You say, if you don't like it here, go back to where you're from. My daughters were born in Cheshire and her cousins are in West Brom. You say that all lives matter, and yes, indeed, that's true. So why are you so angry when we say black lives matter too? This isn't about making every white person pay for the horrific atrocities of yesterday. We're sharing the injustices and how the plight has been misunderstood. No matter what the media states, we're not out for your blood. You call me a lefty or a snowflake if I don't like what you say. Did you ever think how grating it is to hear this rubbish every day? When I want to shout or scream or call you a racist fool, my children remind me not to hate someone who wasn't taught the full history in school. Did you learn about the Windrush generation, brought to the UK to help rebuild our nation? Within moments of the ships reaching their destination, they were repaid with racist hatred and downright degradation. Did they teach you about Sir Etsy Karma? Or his white British wife Ruth, and how they exiled him from what is now Botswana to stop him uncovering the truth? So to those of you who don't understand why the Colston statue met with the fishes, please take the time to educate yourselves, and from me to you, best wishes. Anyone else like to speak today? Doesn't matter if you're an old timer or a newbie, you're all welcome. Did you want to come and speak?
I see Greater Manchester Police, let's wave to them. They're watching, but the whole world is watching. And I just want to report on some figures that I was able to uncover. It took a lot of campaigning to get them out of Greater Manchester Police, and that's some of the figures on disproportionality. And the three figures I'm going to call are this. When it comes to fines during the coronavirus period, black people are 47 times more likely to have been fined under the coronavirus laws by officers of Greater Manchester Police. Tasering. Greater Manchester has been using tasers a lot, and the use of tasers has fallen, but not for black people. It continues to be 6 times as likely that you'll be tasered if you're black than if you're white. And when it comes to handcuffing, it's 4 times as likely to be handcuffed than white compatriots, white brothers and sisters. And those figures are clear from the Greater Manchester Police. That's the Greater Manchester Police. The former head of the Greater Manchester Police said that his force was institutionally racist. But the government recently, with their sewage report, or rather the sewer report, claimed that there is no longer any institutional racism anywhere in the country, except for the Labour Party when it was Jeremy Corbyn, which apparently was an institutionally racist organisation. What a load of, we know what we think of that. So they are an institutionally racist police force, just the same as the Metropolitan Police and all the other police forces, and to give them, the police, more power than they already have would be a very, very backward step. And if they decided, sitting in the car over there, that they didn't like what we were doing here, it would, in future, under the Police and Crime Evidence Bill, they would be allowed to categorise this as an illegal gathering. Not a civil offence, but a criminal offence. And that's why we say, you know, Black Lives Matter and defend the right to protest. And the two things are going hand in hand, and we will stand solid and we will continue to campaign. Let's all out on May Day, a week on Saturday, 4 o'clock in Peter Square. I'll be there, you'll be there, we'll be building it big because Black Lives Matter and we're not going away!
I just really want to make a oh, you're still here, Karen. I thought you sneaked off. Mad. I just want to really quickly make a point about what's happened in the Premier League. So, have you seen how quickly they were able to bring about change after 2 days? It was a 2-day long campaign, and that was a fight back against greed and rich, greedy men trying to make more money and taking the people's sport and profiting off it. So that's what happens when people actually get together and get organised, and protest clearly works. We saw it at Pimlico Academy when all the children refused to go back to lessons because the teacher banned colourful hijabs and afro hair. They sat on the school playground and refused to go back, and the rules were changed. So the power of protest is so important. So that's why we're going to be here every week. Anyone who's new here, feel free to just come over and get added to the WhatsApp group, because like I said, we will be here every Wednesday until racism goes. And if anyone wants to say anything else, jump.
No, not sneaked off. My name's Karen Weissman. I've been here taking the knee in Hulme ever since George Floyd was murdered. And the first week we did that outside my house with some people who'd been doing the clap together for the NHS workers, and I just knocked on doors, having been horrified. And I know racism exists, and I know the police kill black people right across the world, not just in America. But to see it played out, and to see somebody saying so many times, "I can't breathe," and somebody having so little respect for that person that they kept their knee on their neck for we thought it was 8 minutes all these months, and it turns out to have been over 9 minutes. There's something really quite shocking about seeing what racism does to dehumanise sort of people, racists, to turn them into people who are not people, who can slowly suffocate somebody and not give a shit. And you could see that he didn't. And I think we were horrified by that. And that's why we did take the knee on that very first night when George Floyd was murdered. And we thought we wanted to do something more than that. So we've taken the knee every week, whether it was Christmas, New Year, snow, rain, wind, and we have had some shitty weather, although it's very nice tonight. And I think across the world, people responded. And I think there's a level of people saying enough is enough, that we're not putting up with this anymore. And the fact that we are overjoyed that a police officer has been found guilty of a murder that we witnessed, all of us, is something that, why are we so shocked and so overjoyed that somebody who killed somebody and was witnessed and filmed doing it has been found guilty? But it is the first time it's ever happened, despite the thousands and thousands of people that have been murdered, both in America and around the world, including here. And Lamin read out the list of some of the black people who've been killed in this country. And I think it's because of the protests that times have changed, and they don't think they can get away with letting coppers off doing that anymore. And that is something that I think we should take pride in, that we've been part of helping to make that happen. The people who came here week in, week, it might seem small, but actually we're part of a huge movement. And Lamin spoke about the football being about greed, and I think racism is about greed. Slavery was about greed, where people bought and sold people for money in order to make more money and made a living. Britain was made great on the back of buying and selling black people, and they live on that legacy today. The Tories are made great by trying to divide black and white people against each other, by trying to divide north and south, and that's because they want to do greed as well. They want to somehow make money. They said that the COVID vaccine was sort of sold because of greed and capitalism, when it wasn't about greed and capitalism. It was about 98% state funding. But they will still make money out of it, because when we die, and when black people die in even bigger numbers, I work in the health service, and we see
black colleagues time and time again are the people who are in ICU departments and are the people who have died. I think that greed continues, and the protests here are not just against racism, although they are against racism, but they're against the greed of a society that constantly puts making money over people's rights. And we're here to say that's not the sort of society we want. I'm a socialist because I want a better society. We're a rich world. No one needs to be poor. No one needs to starve. No one needs to go with a house. And divisions is how they get away with enforcing that system. And we here are a statement to say we will not go along with those divisions. We don't accept your racism. We don't accept your anti-Roma discrimination. We don't accept your sexism. We don't accept your homophobia. We don't accept any of those divisions, and we will fight together for a better world, and we will carry on coming here at 6 o'clock and take the knee, and hopefully we will stop having new names that we can add to that list as we begin to change the world more.
Yeah.
She is here, yeah. She was wondering whether to do it next week or to do it this week as well. Do you want to speak now?
I was just saying what I
it'd be great if you want to.
I was just saying about, because it's a verdict today, I don't know whether
It's
to
absolutely
take the like,
fine.
topical.
It's not a topic at all. We're here.
It's the same
It's complete the same thing.
Please do.
Okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
Feel free to.
Oh, okay. Hiya. My name's Izzy. I'm part Roma, and on the other side of my family, my grandparents are both Irish travellers. I basically just want to talk a little bit about what the bill, how the bill would impact people who are travellers of any kind of descent, and also like a little bit of history, and not just the history of kind of like bad things that have happened, but also of like what has worked in the past of history. I've got some notes written down, 1 second. Okay, so at the moment in the UK, we've got approximately 300,000 travellers and approximately 250,000 Romani people. And a lot of these people, like, they don't actually fill in the censuses and join in with them, so it's potentially a lot more than that as well. Oh, sorry. So it's like you've got different types of travellers, as in it's kind of different bloodlines, if that makes sense. So Romani people are people who have descended from northern India, like kind of near Rajasthan, and have then moved up through Europe. And kind of like faced a lot of different issues then throughout history. And then Irish travellers and other types of travellers, it's just kind of like different bloodlines, if that makes sense. So what I wanted to talk about in terms of like the history, so in the 1300s, the first Romani person was sold into slavery officially on record. That went on into the 18th century. That didn't stop until then. That happened all over Europe in a lot of different places in the world. Romani people all over Europe were subject to like sterilization. They were branded, murdered. They were enslaved, as I've said, like forced labor, ethnic cleansing in a lot of different places, and abduction of the children. All of this stuff went on up until the 18th century all around Europe. Women actually in a lot of different countries would have either their ears or their breasts cut off to mark them as Romani people. In the 17th century at some point there was something called the heathen hunt, which was in Holland, where they basically went around just slaughtering every single Romani person they could find, or anyone who was a nomadic traveller. And then the first thing I want to talk about in terms of like where things have actually made a difference is the Great Gypsy Roundup. So that was in 1947. That was in Spain, where it was basically made a law that all Romani people could be enslaved essentially and forced to just work for the country. That went on for, I think it was about 40 years or something like that. And the reason that stopped was because of protest. the reason why that ended, the reason why all these people became free, was because communities, Romani communities, other communities that lived there, they protested and they stood up against it and they said, you know, fuck it, it shouldn't be going on. And it stopped going on. And then what I wanted to say about as well, is May the 16th, no, May the 1st we're getting together as well. May the 16th is Romani Resistance Day. And it's been made Romani Resistance Day because in 1944, so as I was saying about, sorry, I'm going off on a tangent. So as I was saying about the stuff that happened in Europe, basically in the end, because of all this this oppression, they decided to move east towards Poland, where they were treated a little bit fairer. And then of course the Nazis came. And the Nazis, I mean, it's not actually even known how many Romani people were killed. It's estimated that it could be anywhere up to 1.5 million. It's not something that you hear about that often when you talk about the Second World War either. And there was a resistance on May the 16th, 1944, where 600 Romani people who were held captive in a concentration camp were told they were going to be murdered, and these 600 people barricaded themselves inside of the rooms that they were in. They armed themselves with pickaxes and hammers, and they basically said, you know, the same thing as before. They said, fuck you, you can't do this. And 300 of them got a second chance. 300 of them were moved on to a different concentration camp, and another 300 of them were gassed and killed. But this resistance, like, these are not people, like my family are not people who will allow themselves to be walked all over, just the same as all the minorities in this country who are being persecuted by these fucking people, our LGBTQ communities, our black communities, all these minorities, these mixed ethnicities, everyone. We've been walked all over, we've had people taking the piss out of us for too long, and it does work. When you say no, when we stand here and we come together as communities and we say no, that is how it ends. That is how it ends, and we have to keep coming. Like, you know, we've been sitting, I know they're gone now, but sitting right there, like, how soul can you be? We are being intimidated, and we are being taught that we cannot come together, and we cannot protect ourselves, and we can protect ourselves, and we can protect each other, and we owe that to each other to keep coming here, and to keep protesting, and to keep this resistance up. So it's amazing to see you all here, and thank you.
Thank you for that history. That was so well said, and very important that we understand people's history because it affects us all. Yeah, if no one else has got anything to say, we'll see you all next week. The fight continues, and if you're not on the WhatsApp group, come and get yourself on the WhatsApp group. Peace, speak amongst yourself.